a wall of fog, a silent river, and a great white liner sliding into the darkness for what everyone thought was just another routine crossing. In the early hours of May 29, 1914, the Empress of Ireland was gliding down the St. Lawrence River, leaving Quebec behind on her way to Liverpool. 1,477 people, families starting new lives, workers returning home, Salvation Army bandsmen traveling to a conference in London, wealthy travelers in polished cabins, and tired emigrants in the lower decks. The ship's lights glowed softly against the night. Inside, doors clicked shut, luggage was stacked, shoes were taken off, and the gentle vibration of the engines lulled people to sleep. She had done this journey hundreds of times. Since 1906, the Empress of Ireland had crossed the Atlantic in all kinds of weather. She was solid, respected, and trusted. To the people of Canada, she was a symbol of connection to the wider world, Canada's proud answer to the great liners of Europe. No one on board knew that within minutes she would be gone, and that more than 1,000 of them would never see sunrise. Not long after midnight, the Empress took on a river pilot near Pointe-au-Père, the last point of land guidance before open water. The pilot guided her through the twisting channel and then stepped off, his job done. The captain, Henry Kendall, ordered the ship back on her usual outbound course. The weather was clear, the sea calm. Off in the distance, he and his officers could see the lights of another ship, the Norwegian coal freighter SS Storstad, moving upriver on an almost opposite course. Two ships, one narrow river, both captains aware of the other, everything still completely normal. The crew on both vessels watched each other's masthead lights and side lights, judging angles and distance, planning how to pass safely. According to later testimony, the Empress expected to pass the Storstad starboard to starboard. The Storstad's officers believed they would pass port to port, two different mental pictures of the same dark river. Then the fog rolled in. It didn't arrive slowly. Witnesses said it came like a wall, sudden, thick, blinding. One moment, clear night. The next, the Empress was sailing straight into a white curtain dropped down over the water. The lights of the Storstad smeared, dimmed, then vanished completely. Foghorns began to sound, deep, mournful blasts tearing through the night. On both bridges, men strained their ears, trying to read each other's locations by sound alone. Engines were adjusted, orders were shouted. Both ships thought they knew where the other was. They were wrong. In the darkness, the Empress of Ireland stopped her engines and even went astern to reduce speed. Storstad's crew, believing the liner had turned, adjusted their own course. In that confusion of misread signals and blind guesses, the river narrowed and fate pushed them onto the same invisible track. Suddenly, out of the fog, the Empress's lookouts saw something, huge, dark, and far too close. The bow of the Storstad. There was no time for careful maneuvers, no time for radioed conversations or second chances. Captain Kendall, realizing the danger, ordered full speed ahead in a desperate attempt to swing away and lessen the blow. On Storstad's bridge, Captain Anderson ordered full speed astern. Neither move could stop what was coming. At 1:56 a.m., the collier's steel bow drove into the Empress of Ireland's starboard side, just about midships. Witnesses later said it felt as if the ship had hit a rock. The impact punched a huge, jagged hole in her hull below the waterline. For a moment, the two vessels were locked together, the Storstad's bow acting like a plug in the wound. Captain Kendall shouted through a megaphone, begging the other ship to keep pushing and hold the gap closed. The river had other plans. Current dragged the Storstad away. The plug pulled back, and tens of thousands of gallons of icy river water exploded into the Empress of Ireland's interior every second. Cabins, corridors, and lower deck spaces were flooded almost instantly. Many passengers never even woke up. Up on deck, some people felt only a violent shudder, followed by a strange tilt under their feet. Others were thrown out of their bunks. Doors slammed, crockery smashed, and lights flickered. The list to starboard increased rapidly. The Empress was already wounded beyond saving. The ship had watertight compartments just like Titanic, but they depended on time. Time to close doors, time to organize, time to think. The Empress of Ireland had almost none. Within minutes, the list became so severe that water began pouring in through open portholes only a few feet above the river. Those portholes, left open for fresh air while the ship was still in safe river waters, now became fatal entry points for the St. Lawrence. Below, in third-class spaces and crew quarters, people were trapped. Beds pinned them. Furniture crushed them. Narrow corridors turned into vertical shafts of rushing black water. Many never made it as far as the ladders. On the upper decks, those who had managed to wake up stumbled into chaos. Some ran for life jackets. Others grabbed children and rushed for the open air. Officers tried to launch lifeboats, but the ship was leaning so heavily that only a few on the starboard side could be lowered. Boats on the port side hung against the hull or smashed as they were dropped into the water. Imagine stepping out of your cabin into a hallway that has become a slope. The floor isn't under your feet anymore. It's at an angle, dragging you sideways while the lights flicker and the sound of water roars from below. Somewhere in that confusion, you hear someone shout, "Get to the boats!" But where are they? Which way is up when the entire ship is tilting beneath you? On deck, some passengers managed to climb the slanting surfaces and reach the railings. A few made it into lifeboats. Only 5 were launched successfully. Others jumped into the freezing black water and tried to swim toward the Storstad's lights. 10 minutes after the collision, the Empress was dying. Inside, the electricity failed. The ship went dark, inside and out. Now there were no hall lights, no cabin lamps, no way to see anything except by flashes of lightning or dim lanterns that hadn't yet gone under. In that darkness, the liner rolled further onto her starboard side until decks became walls and walls became floors. People clung to whatever they could find, pipes, rails, door frames, trying not to slide into the water now churning through what used to be corridors. Around 700 people, crew and passengers together, managed to crawl out of portholes or scramble onto the exposed port side as the ship lay on her flank. They stood there, on the hull of the Empress of Ireland, in the freezing night air, hearing the cries of others still trapped inside. Some waved frantically toward distant lights. Others simply stared, stunned, as the river finished its work. At 2:10 a.m., just 14 minutes after the impact, the bow of the Empress lifted briefly, then the entire ship slipped beneath the surface. Hundreds of men, women, and children were thrown into the near-freezing water. Many wore no life jackets. Some couldn't swim. Some were already too weak to move. Those who survived the initial plunge now faced cold that could stop a heartbeat in minutes. The Storstad, damaged but still afloat, began lowering boats to pick up survivors. On shore, wireless operators at Pointe-au-Père sent frantic messages. The pilot boat Eureka and the government steamer Lady Evelyn raced out into the dark to assist. By the time they reached the scene, it was mostly bodies and wreckage. Out of 1,477 people on board, only 465 survived. Just 4 were children. Only 41 were women. The rest were men and crew who had been strong enough or lucky enough to reach the decks and the few boats that made it away. Among the dead were 167 members of the Salvation Army, many traveling as part of a Canadian staff band headed to a London Congress. Their loss was so heavy that the organization still commemorates them as heroes who never reached their destination. The people of Canada woke to shocking headlines. Empress of Ireland lost. Over 1,000 dead. For a country already watching tension build in Europe, it was a devastating blow. Families waited at docks and train stations, clutching photographs, hoping to see a familiar face step off a ship. But most saw only lists. Passenger lists turned into death lists. The names of the lost filled columns in newspapers from Quebec to London. Questions followed quickly. Who was to blame? Captain Kendall of the Empress of Ireland insisted that the Storstad had turned the wrong way in the fog. Storstad's officers claimed the Empress had altered course across their bow. An inquiry tried to untangle contradictory testimonies, shifting light patterns, and confused whistle signals. In the end, the official report put most of the blame on Storstad's side for altering course in fog and not calling the captain soon enough. Others argued that poor watertight design, open portholes, and overconfidence in river safety all helped turn a collision into a catastrophe. Even today, the exact moment of misunderstanding in that fog is still debated. Two experienced crews, two versions of the same 15 minutes. One result, 1,012 lives lost. The wreck of the Empress of Ireland came to rest at a depth of about 40 meters on her starboard side, not far from where she went down. Divers who have visited the site describe a haunting scene: twisted steel, silent passageways, objects from everyday life still scattered where they landed when the ship rolled. For them, it is not just a wreck, it is a grave. For a time, the Empress of Ireland was front-page news, a national shock. But within months, the First World War exploded across Europe. New horrors, new disasters, and new headlines pushed the tragedy out of the world's memory. Titanic remained famous. Lusitania would soon join it. The Empress of Ireland slowly faded into the shadows of history. Yet the river remembers, the families remember, and every year at monuments in Canada and beyond, names are read aloud. Names of those who boarded a ship on a calm May evening, trusting they would safely cross the Atlantic. They never even made it to the ocean. The Empress of Ireland's story is more than a list of dates and numbers. It is a warning carved into steel and water, that sometimes disaster doesn't come with storms or icebergs. Sometimes all it takes is a wall of fog, a few degrees of misunderstood course, and a handful of human assumptions that turn an ordinary night into a shocking tragedy deadlier than Titanic. If you want to keep traveling into the dark history of the sea, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Deep Sea Legacy, and tell me in the comments, which maritime disaster should I uncover for you next?